Hello, I'm Susan Nash, Texture Press, and I have Nathan Leslie with me today, and he is the author of Van Boyle, and you can see it. I'm sharing the screen. You can see the cover of the book, and it's just been released by Texture Press. And I'm looking at the back here, and just want to point out that the back, if you're curious about the cover, is a photograph of a college team practicing under lights, baseball, and the front is an abandoned house that looks like it may be being used for storage of bales of hay. But anyway, so welcome, and I will stop sharing so we can have our faces on the screen. So welcome, and first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I went to Mary Washington College as an undergrad and then went to University of Maryland, College Park for my MFA a few years after. Um, I started writing when I was about 18 years old, actually maybe 17 years old, poetry and short stories, and I really fell in love with that particular form. And so I discovered right away in undergrad that I really wanted to write for a living, which of course is impossible. But but I wanted to go and get my MFA, so I knew that. And after undergrad, um, I just wrote a ton, mostly short fiction, and then uh, went to College Park and studied there under a variety of people. Reggie McKnight was one of my mentors there, and then I pieced together my first book, which became Drivers. Oh, actually, it turned into my second book because I wrote another collection that ended up coming out first. But yeah, I started writing a lot of short story collections, primarily sort of thematically oriented, in the early 2000s, and began subsequently writing novels as well, and poetry, and I freelanced and I edited, and so
Everything.
just a little bit of everything. More recently, well, in terms of employment, I teach at Northern Virginia Community College. I've been teaching there since
Great,
2002, and I started a reading series about 9 years ago, almost 10 years ago, in Reston, Virginia.
great.
And so, yeah, I have my fingers in a lot of different sort of like literary pies, I guess you could say.
I
But
love
I've been,
it.
yeah, writing and publishing a lot over the last 20 years or so.
Well, I just love your work, and I was just
Thank you.
wondering, what do you think of yourself? Like, do you think of like schools or spheres of influence, like Iowa School versus anything else?
Um, you know, I really wasn't so much attuned to certain schools or certain approaches to writing. I just, was more impacted by certain individual writers. And I wanted to, I remember I was very idealistic when I graduated from undergrad because I wanted to sort of get away from academia actually and just do some kind of normal job and just write at night, like William Faulkner did, or
Or
Raymond
Wallace
Carver, or
Stevens?
Wallace Stevens, and just kind of like not get immersed into academia really. I wanted to sort of kind of keep it pure, and that didn't happen because I just didn't really find a job outside of academia that I really enjoyed. But yeah, I mean, I guess I wasn't really as much influenced by certain schools, but more or less by individual authors.
I love that. So, which authors? Speaking of authors.
Well, I mean, I took some classes in undergrad that really gave me the love for short fiction.
Hmm.
And so I read everyone. I read, Flannery O'Connor. I read Richard Ford and Raymond Carver and all the magical
Oh,
realist
yes.
authors. And I sort of, vacillated between the kind of gritty realist writers and then the more fanciful, Carlos Fuentes and Gabriel Garcia
Hmm.
Marquez. And I still kind
Yeah.
of do that. I like both of those sides of my brain. But I mean, I think initially I was writing a lot in the spirit of a Richard Ford or a Raymond Carver or a Flannery O'Connor, those kinds of folks.
I can definitely see that, especially in the use of metaphor and just the resonance. I mean, just the beautiful writing and then the attention to detail and the aspects of nature and the attention to detail and the location. I mean, the sense of
Mm-hmm.
place. It really
Mm-hmm.
works.
Thank you.
So Van Boyle, oh
Mm.
my gosh. Okay, so as I was saying before we started, I've read it like at least 4 times. Once really quickly a while back, and then quickly more recently, and then in proofreading.
Okay.
So it really gave me a chance to kind of get into the details. And for any of you who have not read it yet, it's a story of a professional baseball player who played for the Baltimore Orioles who had a career-ending injury. And when you first start reading it, you think, well, he just can't find anything else that he cares about. He just loves baseball. That's it. He just can't even think of it in different identity. Then bit by bit, you start understanding why, but he ends up homeless over, after several years. And it just made me think of professional athletes that have, say, traumatic brain injury or something like that, and they can't really do anything else. But anyway, I was just it made me wonder what inspired you to write it.
Well, it's interesting. I have to kind of trick myself to write a novel because I I really love to write short stories, and when I sit down to write, everything comes out as a short story initially. But what I have discovered over the last few years, maybe the last decade or so, is that if I think consciously about a particular concept or a particular form or a particular almost experiment that I want to pursue in a novel, that allows me to enter into the world of a novel. It's a short novel, but it's told through reverse chronology. And I
Yeah,
really wanted to, I've toyed with, I've done that in some short stories, but they're very short. And I really wanted to do that in a novel because I felt like it would be a great way to tell a story about someone's life and what happened at the beginning of their life, what happened early on that would later impact their later life. And so I won't spoil or reveal everything that happens at the very end of the novel or the beginning of Van Boyle's life. But it's a sad novel because it begins with his death, and it
hmm.
begins with his homelessness in the
Yes,
early chapters. Um, and then it scrolls backward, and you find out how he got to that place, and you find out how the series of missteps and the series of tragedies that happened to him that lands him in a very desperate circumstance and homelessness. And so I was really intrigued by this concept of going backwards, but I was also intrigued by the kind of structure I use, which is like a snapshot structure, where each chapter is very short and it is one snapshot of a year of the protagonist's life. Um,
right.
so that concept really intrigued me as just a storytelling mechanism. And I had the character of
It
Van
works.
Boyle. Thank you so much. I mean, it was like, I think for me it was just it was the right vehicle to tell the novel, and so I found it fairly easy to write a first draft once I generated that idea, and then I changed it a lot over a few years because it took maybe an initial year to write, but then I toyed with it for probably another 3 or 4 or 5 years after that.
Oh, I can see it because it definitely shows a lot of thought. But then there are so many things like we were talking about the details. There, like for example, toward the end of his life, you describe finding his amongst his belongings all these uncashed Social Security checks,
Mhm.
and I keep thinking, oh my gosh, but he's homeless. He desperately needed that money, and yet like, it just shows his pitiful ineptitude when it comes to like managing his life.
Yes. And for that part, I was really interested in telling the story of a professional athlete who is unable to manage his money. And this is a common, as as you may know, this is a common occurrence. I mean, there are a lot of professional athletes that make a lot of money but are bad at managing money. And in this
Hmm.
case, he doesn't make a lot of money because he's a professional athlete in the 70s, back when baseball players, got paid maybe like a lawyer's salary. Um, and now, of course, they make billions and billions, but he doesn't, he has some money, but he doesn't manage it well,
Hmm.
as we find out.
I know, it's so sad. And then his relationships are just so tragic. He's married, and I was just wondering how you came up with the relationship with his wife and his children.
Well, I wanted his family relationships to be dysfunctional because it mirrored his his life and his inability, as you mentioned, to kind of move on from what he loved to do, which was to play baseball, to anything after that. And that's also a very common occurrence, I think, for professional athletes, which is, after the glory days, what do you do with your life? And for some professional athletes, they really don't transition well. And this is a story of that kind of character.
The other thing too is like the element of superstition in there. I really liked the way that you incorporated magical thinking in the
Mm.
baseball player's idea for performance and just the randomness and then the issue of the batting averages. So what is the function of that aspect of the narrative?
Well, I grew up playing baseball. When I was a little kid, I started at probably about age 5. And when I was a little kid, I really had no interest in writing anything because I wanted to be a professional baseball player.
Nice.
And so from about age 5 until about age 17, I was fixated on baseball. I played for my high school team, played little
Wow.
league, um, and baseball players, especially professional baseball players, are notoriously superstitious. And I was superstitious too, back in those days. And it's just something that goes along with the sport. I think, if you, there's stories about baseball players who they won't change their socks until their batting streak ends because they, you know, they
Those are
view
their
them
lucky
as
socks.
exactly. And so there's just something about superstition that is impactful in baseball.
Well, and then the idea of the batting average, like, okay, so talking about you make a really good point about it's really most of the time you're going to miss.
Hmm.
And so when you do hit, and I think when you have um a game that's so well, difficult. And then you have different pitchers who have these different techniques and they
Hmm.
deliberately understand, or they try to play on the batter's weaknesses or whatever.
Hmm.
It is sort of like a very mental game that you wouldn't think so if you not are not in it.
It is, especially hitting. Hitting is very difficult. Fielding is difficult too, but hitting, when I was a kid, the cliche was that hitting a round ball with a round bat is the most difficult thing to do in sports because you're trying to, they say to square up on the baseball, but of course your bat is round.
There's something
So
square.
so yeah, I mean, even great baseball players, great hitters, are failures because, in the grand scheme of things, because they are unsuccessful more than they're successful. So if you hit 300, which is a great batting average, especially these days, you're only successful less than 1 out of 3 times in
Oh my
getting a hit.
gosh. Yeah. Yeah, such an interesting point. So when you so for existentially speaking, and from like a beingness perspective, it is going into a world of of failure. And so
Exactly.
then you have these echoes of failure on so different many levels. It's so interesting.
Yeah, and it must be depressing to to experience that. Of course, baseball players have other ways to be successful other than getting hits necessarily. I mean, you can hit a sacrifice fly and still drive in a run without getting a hit, or you can do other small things in the field as a runner and so forth. But just focusing on that one element,
Hmm.
batting is extremely difficult, which is why I didn't make it as a baseball player because at a certain level the ball's too fast, the curve balls are too effective, and it's just too difficult to hit.
I just can't even imagine. I mean, I used to play a little bit. My brother's in Little League, so I'd go around out and hit with him and
Mm-hmm.
my dad, and it was fun, but I wasn't very good. But the thing that's so fascinating too, though, is I mean, one of the aspects of the work that is amazing is that even though it starts with the death and you know it's the decline, it's not depressing to read. It's actually fun to read. And especially when you get into the part where he's playing baseball, you feel the real joy of the game. And I really appreciated that.
Thank you. Yes, that was intentional. I mean, that was probably the easiest component to write just because it's a game that I really loved. But one thing I forgot to add into the discussion is the fact that I initially wrote the novel without the first person components. Um, and so the novel actually has two different points of view in addition to the backward storytelling. But I felt like the first person components were really essential because then you get to actually hear from him and you get to
Hmm.
hear his actual memories straight from the horse's mouth. And that was, to me, that was really important to include, especially in the baseball passages where you get these moments of his reflection on um, the joy of playing, as you
Oh,
mentioned.
it's wonderful. And I think that if you had it like from a third person or even second person, it'd be easy to fall into judgment.
Mm-hmm.
And this way that you can really empathize with him.
Yeah, and I wanted the novel to have a fun, as you mentioned, like kind of episodic quality where you
Hmm.
don't know what's going to happen next. It's a kind of a journey story essentially,
Yeah.
which is another way. I mean, my first novel, Tommy Twice, has that quality. It's a novel that is entirely a journey story, a literal journey, and this is more of like a metaphorical journey because you're going back in time,
Yes.
but you don't know what's going to happen next because it's non-sequential. So I was trying to play on the reader's sense of suspense because when you're going backwards, it's hard to see what's going to come before what you just read.
Well, and there's a mystery too. I mean, like, okay, what exactly did happen and why? And then there's like this stuff like, really? How can he be so naive? Like
Mm-hmm.
that he is. He's so innocent.
He's innocent, and his relationships are kind of in turmoil as a result. It doesn't really work out in most
Yeah.
cases, even with his friends.
Right, right. Wow, that's really, really interesting. So what do you plan to do with the book?
Well, I'd like to do some readings, and I'd like to just both virtual and in person, and I'd like to just share it with whoever wants to buy it. Um, and that's basically it. I mean, I hope to I hope it finds a lot of readers, and I hope that the readers, find a connection to Van Boyle. I think he's a protagonist that is kind of like an everyman in some
Hmm.
ways. If you think about what your life could be like if things didn't go exactly as planned, or what it could be like in the future if you make a mistake, it's a kind of a cautionary tale, I guess, in a sense. Um, but I do just hope that people buy it and people check it out and uh, and learn about this book.
I really like it in the sense that but one of the things I really like is just the relatability of it. And what I'd like to see happen is this is as a publisher, I'd like to see people really start to talk about it
Hmm.
and go on Goodreads or go on Amazon, different places and post and just say, okay, let's think about this because it's so relevant. And then um, thinking of the desperate straits that baseball players get into or athletes. I don't know if you were listening today about the scandal that broke about the NBA.
I saw it pop up on my phone, but I was teaching.
Well, I just happened, it was like live things. I just clicked on it. It was like a news feed. So I clicked on it and it's like, whoa, what? But it was basically, um, I guess the reason it worked is because athletes had gotten hooked on gambling and were in desperate financial straits. So they were willing to like um, leave the game early or do things that would impact the game, and then tell these people that were going to be betting on it whether or fixing the bets or whatever. I don't know how it works really, but at any
Corrupt.
rate, it was well, the mafia was involved and all sorts of things. But they arrested people. They arrested an actual coach of NBA and a couple of players. But I thought, wow, I mean, why would that ever happen? They get paid a lot, but then they're so focused on the sport that I guess, the common sense part or the addiction part or whatever makes you human is going to still be there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's definitely not Van Boyle's character because he's a pretty, um, fairly straightforward character in some ways.
Right.
He's not a corrupt, kind of gambler or
Not
want
at all.
to.
No, he's idealistic.
He's idealistic and he's fairly conventional in a lot of ways. But yeah, no, I do hope people talk about it, and as you mentioned, write about it on Goodreads or Amazon, or just tell their friends about it. I feel like it's a novel that I spent a lot of time writing, and I feel like it might be one that connects to a lot of readers. So that's my hope um, is that it's successful in that.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah, and then even having some little short videos or TikToks, people have response videos or whatever. I would just love to see that.
That's a good idea. Maybe some batting tips.
I like it. Watch the ball. No.
I mean, there's enough interest in baseball out there. I feel like perhaps it will generate some interest in people who just like baseball because it's obviously it's not an entirely baseball book, but the second half does focus on that.
Oh
Um,
yeah, it's great. It's great. Yeah, the baseball part is it's really stunning. And so I think that that combination of your beautiful writing and the humanity of Van Boyle, but then also with the sports, it's a really special book.
well, thank you so much for saying that. I hope I hope people check it out, and I really hope that it finds a lot of readers.
Great. Well, I'll put a link to in the description to the Amazon site and also to Goodreads, and we'll see what happens.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Well, thank you, Nathan. And just to recap, I've been speaking with Nathan Leslie about the book Van Boyle that is available on Amazon and it's just been released by Texture Press. Thank you.